Hey guys, it's Darian64, and welcome to a brand new series I'd like to call Castlevania Theory. In this series, I'll be going over a wide variety of theories and observations pertaining to the world of Castlevania. And today, I wanted to really start off with a bang. This is probably one of the more crazy, insane theories, and I know a lot of my fellow Castlevania peers are looking at this in confusion. Well, sit back and allow me to elaborate. I'd like to preface this by stating that this is just a theory, and at the end of the day, this most likely isn't true, so don't take what I say as gospel. These are simply a series of observations that I wanted to point out because once you look at it with a magnifying glass, it starts to line up and somewhat make sense. Anyway, let's start. Now to start this theory, we need to establish where each game takes place. Circle of the Moon takes place in 1830, whereas Order of Ecclesia's date was left to be ambiguous. We only know that the formation of Ecclesia started in the early 1800s, and that's it. However, there is one tidbit of information that can reveal when Order of Ecclesia might take place. Official info tells us that Dracula is approximately 800 years old at the time of Order of Ecclesia. Now, lining up Dracula's birthday in 1062 AD, we can infer that Order of Ecclesia would take place somewhere in the 1860s or 70s. This would mean that there is roughly a 30 to 40 year interval between Circle of the Moon and Order of Ecclesia. Barlowe is 72 years old, and we actually don't know how old Nathan was at the time of Circle of the Moon. However, if we line up the dates, we can infer that Nathan had to have been in his mid to late 20s during Circle of the Moon, which makes sense given how young he looks. Now that we have the dates and the ages sorted out, let's take a look at the character designs. Just looking at these two side by side, it really looks like Barlowe's design is a natural progression off of Nathan's design. What with the forest green, brown, and gold color palette, the elongated clothing, the gloves, and the white collar. We don't see this happen too much in Castlevania where characters have similar designs and color palettes. They're usually pretty good about making each character unique and distinguishable from one another. I also want to bring attention to their sprites as well, specifically with their hair. Notice how there's a cowlick that protrudes from the back of their head. I couldn't help but notice this during my recent playthrough of Circle of the Moon, and I instantly drew parallels with Barlowe's hair. When I mentioned this theory to some of my peers, they were on board with it for the most part. But there was one small issue they brought up. Why would Nathan feel the need to turn to Dracula's side? What would force him to do something like this? After all, he's the one that slayed Dracula in Circle of the Moon. Why would he of all people side with Dracula? Well, the answer might be more simple than you think, and that answer is Dracula's curse. We've seen Dracula's curse in action in numerous Castlevania games, notably Curse of Darkness, Simon's Quest, and Harmony of Dissonance. In Curse of Darkness, we see Dracula's curse take a hold of Hector, as it causes him to eventually gain a sense of bloodlust and a desire to kill Isaac. In Simon's Quest, the curse takes a more physical approach, as Simon's body is stated to be rotting away over the course of the game. In Harmony of Dissonance, we see Just's best friend Maxim being taken over by the curse, as he becomes hostile towards Just and becoming a secondary antagonist. Knowing all of this, we know that Dracula's curse works in various ways, and this is no different with Nathan. I believe that once Nathan destroyed Dracula, he was tainted by Dracula's curse. However, its effect on him would be lifelong, rather than sudden. He would still retain his personality for a while, but as time went on, he would slowly become more influenced by the curse. He would form a secret organization named Ecclesia, and since this was a secret organization, he would obviously need an alias to go by, and thus, he would choose Barlowe. Now, if you look at the hidden meaning behind this name, it translates to the bare hillside. This can be taken as an allegory for a blank slate, starting a new life, so to speak. Perhaps Nathan's intentions with Ecclesia were good at first, since he had already dabbled with the magic arts before, what with the DSS cards. However, like I stated, as time went on, he would use this organization for more sinister purposes as the curse would take hold. Now there is one last thing I'd like to mention, Barlowe's boss music. The name of this track is called Lament to the Master, Now, ignoring the obvious reference to Lament of Innocence, I'd like to call attention to the master part. Throughout Circle of the Moon, Nathan mentions his master a lot. Hell, that's the main driving force of the game, is that Nathan wants to save and reunite with his master. I feel like it could be a double meaning here as well. Another thing about this track is that it's just so epic. Like, too epic. Especially for a character like Barlowe. When I listen to this track, I get a sense of tragedy and remorse. This seems like a track that should be playing for a more pivotal character. That's not to say Barlowe isn't an important character, he's the founder of Ecclesia and Shanoa's master after all. It just seems like there's more to Barlowe than they're letting on. Perhaps the tragedy doesn't lie with Shanoa's perspective, perhaps it lies with Barlowe. Perhaps Barlowe used to be a genuinely good-natured person with good intentions. Someone who had the knowledge of Dracula's powers and wanted to find a new way to stop him, but like many others before him, was influenced by Dracula's curse. It was the tragedy of Nathan Graves. That, or this character has nothing to do with Nathan Graves at all, and there's no connection to Circle of the Moon, and this happens to just be an illusion caused by my hyperactive sense of pareidolia, who knows? But that's gonna wrap it up for this segment of Castlevania Theory, you guys. Like I said, it's just a theory at the end of the day, and it's not meant to be taken seriously. This was just something that sounded interesting to me, and it almost makes sense when you really look at it. Anyway, this has been Castlevania Theory, and I'll see you guys in the next one.